r/Nosleep. Posted by Zenrebok. We're all monsters but I'm different, Part 1. All humans are monstrous in some way or another, we all do cruel things at some time, and some are crueler than others. But, I'm not just a monster, because I act badly from time to time. I'm an actual monster. What I can do, it's not human at all. I watched some of the sick shit ISIS does in its videos, and it was terrible, truly terrible. But that can't hold a candle to what I can do, what I've done. If those guys met me, well, it would get vivid. I was 14, when the realization came over me, that I was very wrong at some fundamental level. I was wasting time, one Saturday in the empty lot next to my mom's house. It was overgrown with grass, there were wildflowers and trees, and all in all it was the closest thing I had to a garden growing up. Up to that day, I was just another sulky teenager, I had reason to be. A kitten appeared, a beautiful kitten, a ginger fluff ball and cute as can be. I had no pets, so, I just sat down and played with it. It chased grass, I waved at it, rolled over and raked at my hand, it let me pick it up and pat it. Kid stuff. I felt no evil toward it, no desire to harm it, quite the opposite. I wished I could preserve this moment forever. As the hour moved on, I grew closer and closer to the kitten, I didn't want to leave it. Mom would say, take it back, if I took it home. So sooner or later I had to walk away. And I really didn't want to. As I pat it, it purred, and I looked at it and I felt love for it like I'd never known before. Sounds tacky, but it happened, I was totally in love with that ginger kitten. I held it close, and the love kept building. It wasn't like a sexual thing, in case you're going there. It was clean, like the love you have for your nearest and dearest, but times 10. If only we could be together, forever. I opened my mouth, pushed it inside, there was a short cry and then I bit down. I felt a sickening crunch and a squeak cut short. And I swallowed it. It shouldn't have simply slipped in so easily, this was a normal-sized kitten, but it did. I felt so warm, so fulfilled, it was like I would burst. The colors of the world were brighter, I could detect dozens of smells, and sounds. The currents in the breeze washed over me and I could separate all of them apart, and feel them all at once. The incredible high lasted, for a couple of hours, but slowly I returned to normal. I found myself sitting in the tall grass, a little puzzled, and then it dawned on me. I'd eaten a kitten, in an impossible way, a fear grew in me. That wasn't normal. People don't devour cats the way a vacuum cleaner swallows Skittles. I grew increasingly upset, started to cry, what the hell was I? The days after were wretched, I had this terrible secret, that I couldn't tell anyone. I was all over the place, my mom barely noticed, but, she wasn't well and worked 2 jobs. My oldest brother Dale had signed up for the infantry, and my other brother Cody, was working part-time while struggling to get into college. I had friends, but I kept quiet. Dad had died, and I guess I hung out at his grave a lot after that. Kept telling him I was sorry, I was bad, and I wish he was here. Years passed, with no further incidents, and then, I ended up on a farm for some bullshit school trip. We were getting a taste of farm life, when I wandered off and I found myself in a giant shed full of chickens. The smell and the noise were awful. Poor chickens, locked in cages with no room to move really. For some reason, a chicken had gotten out, or wandered in from outside, I don't know. It walked up to me slowly, and I just started it. Which had the effect of, sort of, making it come to me. I didn't realize that was what I had done at that moment. I thought it was funny, that a chicken would just walk up to me. It stopped and looked up at me, that way they do, when their head goes to one side in a jerky motion. It was like a yo-yo, left, right, right. I reached down and picked it up. The incident with the kitten was out of my mind, so I didn't immediately feel the shift in me. Warmth grew in me, I felt intense love, and then I knew it was happening again. Shit. I heard a bang, like a heavy door swung wide open and connecting with a wall. I shoved the chicken into my mouth in a panic, the whole thing just slid in effortlessly, with a surprised squawk. I turned to see a guy approaching me. "You from the school?" I nodded. "Tour's not in here, son," he said sharply. Sorry. I left quickly, feeling stoned and happy, and conflicted. The afternoon went by like a crazy cartoon, of saturated colors and heightened senses. Eventually I came back down, and the guilt began again. Actually I felt worse than before. I thought, at the time, the hangover was as bad as the high was good. I also connected feeling a strong love with the overwhelming desire to devour living things, and it messed me up. I've kept my distance from people. I didn't want to have an episode and eat someone, so I went from loner to loneliest kid on earth. I graduated high school, and without giving away where I live, I went hunting for work in town without any major industry. It had all been wound down in the 90s and early 2000s. No way was I going to college. Cody had just scrapped enough money together to go. With Dale's help. Dale is solid, I don't know, Mom says he's a lot like Dad was at that age. Generous. I ended up working in a gas station, doing every shitty shift I could get. Honestly, competition for the job was fierce. There's like 60% unemployment here. I got the job after others quit, found something better or died. So much lucky. Working nights, you meet all the fuck-ups in this town. They might not be as such, if they had jobs and a purpose. I wish some of that big money that ran the mines and the mill would come back here. Folks are desperate. I've been robbed at work, like, 6 times. Got beaten on the job twice, in a couple of robberies. I've been assaulted, dragged outside and kicked. Yeah, living the dream. I keep coming back. The boss, who is an asshole, nicknamed me Punch. 'Cause I can take a punch. I filled out as I matured, not like Dale, but I'm no pussy either. I started collecting characters, regulars who I saw at least once a week. Without trying, I befriended them one by one. They were all head cases in one way or another. Through this odd collection of people as unacceptable as I was, I got invited to parties and meetups. It was a lifesaver. I needed it too. I was going crazy in that town. At this one party, somehow, I ended up in a room with a girl called Stephanie. She was a bit of a hard ass, but after some booze and flirting I found myself making out with her. As the romance began to build, I felt a shift in me again, and it terrified me. I made a gentle excuse to use the bathroom, and I'm in there cursing myself. This was the first girl I'd ever been intimate with. Fine laugh, I'm like 18 at that point, and a virgin. She knocks on the door. You okay? Yep. 'Cause I have something for you, when you get out. Cool. Something nice. Oh great. As she's talking, I'm falling in love with her voice. The kissing has set me up for more and I want her. Another minute passes. Been a while babe, you sure you okay? Yeah, and what? What can I say? I won't bite, she says, playfully. Oh god. But I will. I glance around. Can I climb out the tiny window? Maybe, with a lot of noise. I look at myself in the mirror, and then it hits me. I whimper and recoil. My eyes are fully dilated, massive black irises, and as I turn my head, light glints red of the back of them. Like a big cat in a spotlight. I never knew. Until then. I want this to stop. I could go out there, and be normal, we'd make out. I'd be like every other horny teenager. I'm begging God at this stage, don't let this monster wake up. And I feel it, the love, the tidal wave crashing through me. I love her so much. I want to be with her, we could be together forever. The door opens unexpectedly, and I spin around to see her. She's unbuttoned her blouse, and I get the holy grail flash of the firm young body of a beautiful woman. I cover my eyes swiftly. I can hear confusion and concern and the start of suspicion in her voice. What's going on? I'm sorry, I get migraines. I thought, maybe if I splashed on some cold water, but it's building. I'm sorry. Shit timing. She sighs with a strong hint of suspicion. So, it's not me? I shake my head. No. No, God no. Honest, I want you, I really want you. These headaches wreck me. I feel her mood shift. You want me? She says with a positive lilt. I do. I say quietly. Well, I guess, this will have to wait. She huffs a small laugh. I beat a dignified retreat with much I'll call you. Promise and I had a great time and I leave, still a virgin. I'm angry, as I walk home. No way I can stick around after that, I had to leave. It's dark, really dark on this side of town. Run-down houses, fewer street lights, and half of the ones we have are busted or blinking. I don't have a car, I walk everywhere, so, I'm reasonably fit and start the long walk back to my mom's house. I mutter, and curse, and wipe a tear away. I know, pussy right? Fuck you, what do you know? I'm crossing a half-dilapidated park, when the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. What the hell? Some deep instinct screams hide. I don't argue. There's a giant tree in that park, trimmed to stop someone like me climbing it, but I find handholds and scramble up it. I can't shake a sense of impending doom, so I just keep climbing up, not even sure how I manage that. I press myself hard against the branch I'm on, and slow my breathing, watching the park below. After a minute or so, a figure shuffles into view. It's dark so I can't make out too much, but it's not human. It's got a head, 2 arms and legs, but it moves wrong. Like it's only mimicking ordinary human motion. What the hell? It's bad enough I'm a monster, but there's something down there really scary. Something a monster like me needs to fear. It's at times like this I wonder, what the hell did I do in a past life to deserve this? Minutes pass, it wanders around, sniffing loudly, like it knows someone is around. I'm barely breathing. It stops beneath the park's only working light stand. In the feeble light of an ancient lamp, I can finally see it. Its face doesn't fit, it's loose on the left, the eye bulges atop the cheekbone. The mouth drools, slurps back spit noisily with the flick of its tongue, its lips flap and droop. I can just hear it breathing, ragged, hoarse, like someone's making it do something it doesn't normally do. While it lingers there, I hear it stop breathing, as if it forgot to, then, with a spastic rattle, it starts again. Just go away. I wish to the night, get the hell away from me. It waits for no reason I can fathom, then, with clumsy jerking motions, it turns and shambles off. I wait a long time. Finally, with stiff, cold limbs, I climb down out of the tree and run home. That night sucked. It was the first of many. We're all monsters but I'm different, part 2. Things kinda escalated after the party. I rang Stephanie, and she answered. Amazing me. We met up again. I was awkward. I tried not to apologize too much for bailing on her. She'd given me a second chance, so I did my best not to screw it up by looking weak. It wasn't really a date. We hung out downtown, ate burgers and talked shit. It was a relief that I didn't feel the shift at all. We had some things in common. This town screws up just about everyone. We're both odd. It was so normal just to be around someone who I could talk to. I wanted normal. I like normal. When you're abnormal, then steady and sane has a magnetic attraction. I grew to like her that afternoon. She was a cool chic, and hell-bent on mischief and adventure. After a while she brought up the party, but it was cool. So, you kinda left me in a hurry on Friday, dude. Yeah. I wanted to stay, but I had to bail before my brains exploded. She leant back in her chair, crossed her arms, and gave me the evil eye. I was left squirming. Damn. Stephanie was burning a hole in my head with her hard-ass stare. You left me hanging, Chief. I was starting to really like you too. I shook my head in contrition. Yeah. I remember saying slowly. You had all my attention. Then, poof. Gone. She smiled, and I let out a sigh of relief. We could pick up where we left off? I said. I didn't know, she said with a wry smile, not used to guys freaking at the sight of my belly button. It was more, much more than just a belly button. But, let's see how things go. Maybe, we'll take it slowly this time. She finally said. And like that, I had a girlfriend. Which was unexpected, but welcome. We lasted for quite a few months, nearly a year. I had some frights during an intimate moment or two, but I managed not to literally eat her. There may have been a spate of missing pets in the neighborhood, however. She had made no secret of wanting to attend college out of state, and after she graduated her senior year of high school, she got a confirmation letter. I was down for a long time about it. I knew we were through. She did too, so we parted as friends, and I'm glad that's how it ended. I cheered myself up by going on a binge. I don't know why I thought this was a good idea. Guess I wasn't thinking. Behind the gas station I work at is the dumpster. Every dumbass in town abuses it and dumps their crap in there. I see them on the security cameras when I'm at work. You wouldn't believe it. 3 a.m., some soccer mom comes and dumps a week's worth of trash in there. Anyway, it's turned into a magnet for rats, cats hunting the rats, raccoons and squirrels. One day, I just walked up to the security camera blindside, crouched down and waited. After a while I caught sight of a rat. It got hooked by my stare, and it walked up to me. I ate about 5 of them in a row, barely touched the sides. Damn, I must have a good immune system. I got the warm glow, the euphoria and the love. I was all rainbows and unicorns that afternoon. I did feel a little guilty. If you are quick, they're too dazed from the stare to react much. Which I prefer. And things went on like that, for a while. Getting over Stephanie was hard. I had gone from liking her, to really liking her, to finally loving her. Ah man. Life comes at you fast. She was better off without me. I was going nowhere in life. I stayed in that town, to help my mom. My salary helped with the bills, and Dale would deposit some of his army salary into her account. I just kinda turned into a zombie, going through each day like a video clip repeating. Now our town has a lot of homeless folks, some come from here and others end up here, God knows how. You really have to go off the beaten track to end up here, in the mountains. One guy I got used to seeing at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. was Stanton. He was usually okay, just mumbled a few words, when he came in to buy smokes. One night, it's quieter than usual, so I empty the bathroom trash cans and take the rubbish out to the dumpster. And I'm just in time to see Stanton's mouth expand inhumanely wide to swallow a rat. I drop the trash, and freak. What the hell? He hears me, stands up from beside the dumpster and glares at me. "What you looking at?" Running at this point might be a good idea, but I stay there, trying not to make him mad by staring. "You ain't seen nothing." He spits angrily. I sigh, and think to myself, I'm about to do something really dumb. "I do it too," I said, voice shaky. He glares hard at me. "Do what?" he says with a low growl. "Let's just say, there's nothing I can eat." Stanton walked over to me, I'll never forget it, and straightens up like he's been faking the rundown hobo thing. "You messing with me?" he says quietly. Which seems worse somehow than yelling. No, sir. I ain't messing with you." "Care to prove it?" I look at the dumpster, then him. "I'm gonna need some bait." 5 minutes later, Stanton and I are waiting for a rat to smell the microwaved burrito I've dropped near the dumpster. About 5 minutes after that, a good-sized rat cautiously sneaks out. Only then does it occur to me, I've never truly triggered this monster in me on demand. My binge just kinda happened without too much thought, less impulse, more instinct you might say. The rat sees us both, pauses, then walks up to Stanton. I look at the rat, I stare at it, and capture its attention. It walks over to me, an arm's length away from Stanton. Something shifts in me, but I'm nervous as hell. This is my secret. How do you share something like this? I scoop the rodent up, and with a love in my heart fit to bust, and warmth in my belly like I just won the lottery, I devour the rat. "Well now," Stanton said. "Looks like we have something in common." He offered me his hand. "I'm Stanton. James." We shake hands, his grip is firm, but I can tell that under the heavy surplus army coat he's quite thin. It's just the way it hangs on him. "We should talk. But not here. You know the rail bridge heading out of town?" "Yeah. Me, and a few others like us, met there every Thursday. From about noon. Come see me there." "I'm not sure. I think it's a dumb idea." He starts to leave, gets about 10 feet away when he turns and asks me, "What's the biggest thing you ever ate?" I shrug. He frowns, but nods his head. "You got some things to learn about this." He gestures at his face, and then leaves. Oh great. There's more like me. We're all monsters but I'm different, Part 3. We don't talk about it. What do you take to a meet and greet, of people who can devour a living animal whole, without it touching the sides on the way down? Beer. I got a dozen and shoved the cans into a backpack. It was Thursday, and I had decided to take up Stanton's invitation, to meet under the rail bridge heading out of town. It was obviously a dumb idea. Go drinking with complete strangers at a remote location, probably monsters, yeah, that's smart. Kinda like spring break in Cancun, what could possibly go wrong? Headless corpse found submerged in river, news at 6. I decided to go while it was still light out, he said after midday, didn't he? So, nervous, and armed with a bag filled with beer, some beef jerky and a hunting knife I went to meet people like me. The rail bridge crossed over a narrow, but deep gorge. It was built to stand up to huge loads of ore, steel and coal. The bridge would probably outlast the town. Not surprising really, the town was all but dead. No industry, big opioid problem, high unemployment. Heartbreaking. My mom and dad had been born here, grew up and got married, and had hoped the same for their 3 sons. Wasn't likely to happen now. I kicked rocks as I went, pissed off at it all. Under one of the massive bridge legs, stood Stanton. A stone-ringed fire had been constructed, and some thoughtful soul had dumped a collection of armchairs and chairs from cars there. Real cozy. Sitting there was another guy too, looked pretty pale, like he was ill. I waved and forced a smile of sorts as I approached. "Hi," I said. But with little energy. "Hi," Stanton said. He pointed to the pale guy. "Mike, this is James." I stepped over to Mike, who stayed seated, and shook his hand. It was quite cold. "Are you okay?" I asked Mike. He gave a weak nod. "Will be, if Stanton ever learns to make a decent fire." Stanton scoffed, but threw some scrap wood on anyway. "I brought beer." "Beer? Really?" Stanton said, surprised. I unzipped the backpack and passed around the cans. "Got 2 more people for you to meet. They should be here soon. Take a seat." I sat and sipped beer, passed around the beef jerky and waited for someone to say something. No one did. Some party. After about half an hour, 2 more men showed up, Gary, who looked too young to be on the road, and Ryan. He looked well put together, healthy, and quite out of place with a tan and perfect teeth. After we finished shaking hands and they settled in. With beer in hand, and standing close to the fire, Stanton piped up. "Well, I met James here a few nights ago. He caught me, can you imagine it? Swallowing a rat." "Fuck's sake," Mike said, "you back eating rats?" They all laughed. I managed to smile. "So, I go to intimidate him, and he just spits it out. I do it too." More laughter. About now I'm thinking I'm just a prop in Stanton's comedy routine, the kind of thing that pisses me off real fast. But he proved it. So, here he is. "Welcome, James," he said warmly, and toasted me. The others raised their cans, and I felt a little less riled up. "James, how long have you been?" Gary paused. "Since I was 14, I murmured. The others watched on, expecting more perhaps. "Yeah, me too," said Mike. "Well, maybe closer to 15, but about the same." Stanton chimed in. "After I mustered out of the army, a long time now. Came to me late though, I guess." Ryan smiled a little. 10 for me." They sipped their beer for a while in silence. Stanton finally spoke. We arrived at it without any mentoring. No one taught us what we are, or why we have this ability." Mike frowned. "Curse more like." Gary dipped his head, and Ryan looked uncomfortable. "Yeah," Stanton said. "That, it can be." Stanton's story. Stanton had been in the Army for Gulf War II, transporting armored vehicles, and had been moving up the ranks towards sergeant. But some screw-up had loaded the wrong M1 Abrams on his transporter. He delivered it without double-checking the tank's serial number against the manifest. It was contaminated with depleted uranium, apparently, and when it didn't show up where it should have been sent, the brass blew their stack. He was busted back to private. Pissed off with that, when his tour was over, he mustered out with an honorable discharge. He struggled to find a job, and he was sick often, his limbs burned and he was often fatigued. The VA couldn't help much, since it wasn't a missing limb, and his doctors seemed to dismiss it as all in his head. No one admitted it was Gulf War syndrome, or similar. But he knew. He went from part-time job to short-term contract, and back again, living with his girlfriend. They had planned to marry, if he could just get on his feet first, but he started to despair. One day, he was feeling rough, and instead of going out to find work he stayed home. His dog, Jess, a border collie that had given birth to 6 puppies a month previously, wanted out. He let her out into the yard, but kept the puppies in the laundry. The fatigue got to him, so he sat down and let the pups scramble over him. He grew so weak, he had to lay down, finding it hard to breathe. The pups ran around and over him, licking his face and nipping his hands. Stanton felt a strong urge to pick up a puppy. He managed to lift one up to his face, gave it a quick kiss on the nose, and then swallowed it whole. A glow of perfect joy and peace boiled up inside him, and without thinking, he swallowed the other 5. The afternoon passed in pure ecstasy, and when his girlfriend came home, she found him still laying on his back in the laundry. She went into a panic. Once she determined he wasn't dying, she asked, "Where are the puppies?" Stanton was still very woozy, and they decided he must have left the door ajar, and the pups got out. His girlfriend scoured the street looking for them. She posted flyers and called the animal shelter. She was devastated. He had no memory of what he'd done. Things went downhill after that. He'd have nightmares about eating the puppies, His burning nerves got worse, and he couldn't function. He lost so much sleep, and grew so unacceptably volatile, his girlfriend asked him to leave. He tried the VA, but eventually, ended up on the streets. One night, half delirious with fatigue, he found himself devouring small dog. And then it hit him. He had swallowed the puppies. He was a monster. I wandered a while, looking for an answer, but you know how it is, you don't go hungry. I wasn't sure if that had been meant as a joke or not. I get by. But, I did get some answers eventually. Sort of. What answers? I asked. We're another kind of human, the kind that can live close to nature. I wasn't so sure, I felt wrong, and guilty. Are we human though? I said. Stanton shrugged. Human enough. They sipped their beer for a quiet moment. Stanton dropped some more wood on the fire, and poked at it with a stick. Well, I'm not, Mike said, not human. Stanton leveled a gaze at him. I picked up some tension there. I wanted to know what he meant. Why say that? Now Mike, you don't have to. James should know, Mike whispered. Gary and Ryan avoided looking at me or Mike. I felt cold dread passing up my spine. Mike's story. I used to be a nurse. In New Orleans. He started. I was there for Hurricane Katrina. No way this ends well, I thought. I worked for a retirement village, but I was on a roll of nurses available in an emergency. After 9/11 we got prepared for a mass casualty event. I went onto a list, just in case. He stared at the fire. We got our people out early, it was a good facility, good management. But, being on the list, I stayed back, and got called into a smaller clinic to help evacuate patients. I missed out on the horror of Memorial Hospital, but I took some horror with me. I'd been eating since I was a kid. No guilt either, it just seemed natural, even when I worked out it was not normal. I didn't care. For some reason, I went into nursing, maybe I felt guilty. He shrugged. Well, the clinic filled up fast on the eve of the flooding, we moved a busload of people out, then things started going wrong. I ended up in charge of a dozen kids, poor kids. The youngest was 6 months, the oldest 8. I didn't want to hear what happened next. Looking around, neither did anyone else. I got 2 kids out, the 8-year-old was retrieved by an aunt, and another kid got picked up by an older brother. The flooding started, it went from bad to crisis. I took the kids up into a loft above the clinic. It wasn't 2 stories, just a roof cavity. We waited for rescue. I had no communications, very little food and almost no water. Other staff had made a break for it to get help, and they eventually got picked up. But I wasn't. Not for days. When rescue finally arrived, I was alone. Questions were asked, where's the kids? I had to lie, I said, that a guy had come by in a boat. And I had begged him to take them. A chill silence seemed to surround us, the fire did nothing, it was like no heat could escape. They searched high and low for them, found nothing, and in the end I lost my nursing license. For failing to preserve the safety of patients, in a time of crisis. I didn't fight it. Stanton sighed, we don't talk about it. He directed at me. We don't talk about eating people, Mike said bitterly. We don't talk about eating children, Stanton hissed. That shit can't do us no good. Mike looked hard at Stanton, he needs to know where this can lead. If he hasn't already done it. I shook my head. I wouldn't eat a kid, I said. I was getting angry, in truth I was scared. Wouldn't you? Gary asked matter-of-factly. Ryan cleared his throat. The world is a clusterfuck. What you can't imagine today, might be a habit tomorrow. I threw it out there, so, who here hasn't eaten kids? Dumb idea. Glares all around. Stanton just mumbled once more. We don't talk about it. We're all monsters but I'm different, part 4. I sat in awkward silence. Mike, Gary, Ryan and Stanton all avoided looking at each other. When a monster admits to eating children, it puts a downer on things, who wants that on their conscience? Well, Gary said plainly, time to lift the mood I think. It was then I started paying attention to him properly, his poise, his voice, the way he phrased things. Gary wasn't entirely like the rest of us. Stanton knows a little about me, and Ryan I've spoken with in brief. Gary is of course a pseudonym. You may well have guessed. I have to protect my identity, for reasons I'll make clear soon. I am significantly older than I look, and I inhabit a world you can hardly imagine. Gary's story. I was a son of an undertaker, and was expected to follow in my father's footsteps, an obligation I welcomed. At the age of 10, I viewed my first dead body, in the preparation room of the family mortuary. The deceased was an elderly gentleman, who collapsed in the street of natural causes. The doctor pronounced him dead and he was brought to us. While my father busied himself with the grieving family, I prepared the man to receive his loved one's final farewell. I leant in close, to check he was dead, one last time. You can't be too careful. The urge came over me, to open his mouth, and it was so instinctual I acted on the urge. I performed my first dark miracle that day, when I inhaled, and drew his still heart out of his chest via his throat. I swallowed it easily. Of course I recoiled, horrified, disturbed as you have been yourselves. But instead of guilt, I had curiosity, and the warm glow and sense of peace and satisfaction you too have known. I carefully closed his mouth, and bound it shut in the manner of the time, with a thin linen band tied atop his head. Wait. How long ago was this? Mike asked. Let me put it this way. We were the first business in town to have electric refrigeration. But that on that particular day, such a thing was years in the future. He continued. So I was some kind of monster, but a peculiar one. The library was no use and the Bible simply indicated that I was corrupt. But was I damned? Or was this something else? I served my father, as a dutiful son, eventually becoming his equal in our trade. He was a good man, and a loving father. The business grew and thrived. Over the years, I continued my practice of the dark miracle, consuming the hearts of the recently dead. Secretly, and without detection. I believe I stopped aging around 17, but by age 20, it was clear to me I was not physically growing older. I was healthy, strong, fit and able. I put it down to my secret diet. Here's what I learned about my branch of the monster family. The heart of the recently deceased is most palatable. If the body is kept cool, 24 hours may pass with no ill effects. If the body is frozen, or greatly chilled, 48 hours may pass and the heart is acceptable but not as satisfying. Never once did I eat a heart older than that. From my travels I learnt why my instincts were so strong. Monsters like us, that eat carrion, become misshapen beasts. Ravenous and almost mindless. In time, in order to keep my secret, I sold the family business, and set a new one in a distant city. I learned how to cover my tracks, how to create false documents and conceal my origins. I did this for many decades, moving on when I needed to. I amassed a great deal of wealth. I used this wealth to increase my wealth further still. I traveled the world, and learned secrets you can only dream of. There are cults, of ordinary humans, that are aware of our dark abilities. They emulate us, by eating the hearts of the freshly murdered, something I have never done or condoned. We need not kill, to eat as we do. There are other ways. These cults are attempting to twist the world into becoming their own private butchery, something we must prevent. There are also groups that hunt us. Ryan nodded in agreement. My home, California, contains a den of wannabe monsters. We might be inhuman, but they are evil incarnate. And they do hunt us. They want to wrestle our dark gift from us. Gary looked directly at me. I'm recruiting. As I travel the land once more, I want to gather our kind together. An alliance of sorts, for self-protection, and to share all we know with each other. Yesterday, I was a rat-eating deviant. Now, I'm a chess piece in some bizarre game. It was enough to have heard Stanton's and Mike's stories. This was way too much to absorb. What would we have to do? I asked. Be available, stay in touch with me, and each other. If a need arose, I have the means to pay for your travel and accommodation. What need? I asked. I believe a war is coming. Some hunt us in a vain attempt to gain our abilities, others simply to kill us. On our own, we won't last long, but together, we have a chance. Ryan spoke up. Look, I'm on the road, because I got chased out of Los Angeles. They know about me. And they'll stop at nothing to capture one of us. They're insane, and they can't be reasoned with. Stanton poked the fire again with a stick, and looked at Gary. Wheel, that's more than you told me earlier. How do we know you're telling the truth? You need proof. Of course, I can offer that in part here, but more so at one of my safe houses. Too good to be true, I thought. Wealthy benefactor turns up out of the blue. I wasn't ready to jump in. It's a lot to take in, I finally said. Gary agreed. Yes, which is why I make the offer without conditions. I'll be leaving town very soon. He passed around some cards. A phone number was the only thing on them. If you decide to get involved, ring me. He stood, shook our hands one by one, and left. I watched him go, not sure what to think. Ryan cleared his throat, I suppose I should tell you about Los Angeles. Ryan's story. I was born in luxury, and grew up needing nothing. I pretty much got anything I wanted. I went to the best schools, and I was popular, but, like everyone here, I had a secret. I eat, like you, largely without guilt. I'll get right down to it, I kill adults, I'm very efficient and I do it often. Mike, you have my sympathies, I don't feel the way you do. I have never eaten a child. Nor have I been tempted. Maybe it's my upbringing. Maybe I was conditioned to be callous, or maybe it's me. But I hunted through the grimy back streets and alleys of Los Angeles, and I have been a curse on that city's homeless and illegal aliens. This all changed recently, when I attended a party in the Hollywood Hills. My parents were well connected. My mom and dad are at risk now. Because of me, they left the country with Gary's help. It was a seriously walled-off mansion, with its own security guards, but I could be in and out in seconds if I chose. I won't name the homeowner, he's Hollywood elite. I was mingling with A-listers and the movers and shakers, when I noticed this teen, can't be more than 14 there. He's slipping around the edges of the party, like he's trying to find a way out. I've hunted enough, to know when someone knows they're being hunted. It bothered me. I don't hold with the pedos in the hills molesting kids. Yeah. I've heard those stories. But now I know too much. So, I trailed him, and finally, managed to approach him. He was trying to keep his shit together, but he was scared. Please. Can you get me out of here? They're going to kill me. Who? Who is going to kill you? I asked him. He pointed carefully, hand close to his chest, to someone whose name you all know. I ran away from home, they picked me up on the streets, said I could be in the movies. They took good care of me. But, I know, I've seen what they do. Please, please, help me. I was shocked he trusted me so quickly, but really, he was just a kid. Out of his depth. A woman, you've all seen on magazine covers, and her coterie of wannabe starlets found us, and gently and quietly led him away. She looked back at me and smiled. I resolved then, if this boy's fear was real, that I'd eat her heart right in front of her. I don't hold with tormenting children. It brings out the worst in me. I'm pretty invisible when I want to be, and I managed to slip into the house, and trailed her. I can smell those I hunt, like a bloodhound. It was easy. Downstairs in the garage, which smelt of recent car exhaust, I found a steel door. It was presented as a utility door, but that was a lie. I'm only so-so at breaking and entering really secure doors, but I have a sense of smell so acute, I can smell finger grease on the security keypad. I got it right on the third go. The corridor led to a room. The room was empty. I figured they must have taken him away in a car. I was too late. I look around, there's nothing obvious. It's just an empty room, with nothing in it, kinda weird to secure it that way. I go to leave, and as I'm climbing the stairs, this huge Samoan security guard stops me. He took me to the guard station. They had me on videotape. Some guy, I don't recognize, shows up, and starts grilling me. Says he's going to call the cops, and runs a whole routine on me. Trying to freak me out. It doesn't work. Then a certain well-known face steps in, and brings up footage of me talking to the kid. What did he say to you? She asked me. He said you're keeping him here against his will. I replied. Stupid? No, I wanna fuck with him too. Turnabout is fair play. Then she starts running this he's a very disturbed young man, blah 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 script. I act like I'm buying it. But she'd been paying too much attention to me. She's what we call a sensitive, she can tell I'm not human. The guards put me in an SUV, say they're taking me to the police station, to have me arrested for trespass. Like I believe that shit. We drive, in the wrong direction, and they take me to another house, a long way out in the hills. They manhandle me into a room, and lock me in. I let them. No biggie, I relax, and listen to their heartbeats through a foot of bricks and drywall. After a while, some other asshole shows up. I can feel him peering at me from the other side of the door. I hate psychics, they're always a pain in the ass. About now, I'm getting pissed off, and let the spook outside know they're all in a world of trouble. Mostly I'm bluffing, I'm happy to run from there, no harm no foul. But no. They have to be pricks. They haul me out, and take me in front of the psychic and some dipshit in a hooded cloak. Really? I mean, really? A hooded cloak? Fucking emos. We know what you are. Ryan. He says. I look him over, and the world slows down, while I speed up. They have no idea. I grab the security guy to my left and suck a golf ball-sized chunk of brain out through his temple, While he's busy falling to the ground, guard number 2 is reaching for a gun. I watch him like he's standing still, his hand barely moving to the holster. I kick his right leg out and he falls towards me. I clasp his head in my hands and liberate another ball of brain matter through the top of his head. I turn to the gimp in the satanic pajamas and Mr. Psychic intervenes. I can feel him, in my head, holding me back, slowing me down. Screw that, I can spit brains a long way, and he cops and I fill of the hired goon's gray matter. That breaks his attention for a second. I run. I run through a plate glass window and I leg it out of there. I can hear the freak in my head, laughing. "We know who you are, we'll find you, Ryan." He lets something slip, an intention to harness my power. I doubt he meant to inform me. Lucky for me, Gary has a talent for finding our kind. He picked me up halfway across the country. He explained to me who we're dealing with. Ryan stood and fished another beer out of my bag, popped the ring and sat back down. "We're all at risk. It's bigger than you can imagine, it's worldwide, mostly we barely register on their radar. But they will come after us. Eventually." Stanton sighed, and frowned heavily. Why the hell I invite people over for a drink, is beyond me. We all laugh at that. I mean, this is as serious as it gets, but we needed to laugh. I have 1,000 questions. But what I want to know most, is how to hunt like Ryan, and how to eat like Gary. We're all monsters but I'm different, Part 5. Over the following weeks, I met up with Stanton, Mike and Ryan on a Thursday, under the rail bridge at the edge of town. Ryan left 2 weeks after my first Monsters Anonymous meeting. He said he'd be in touch. We swapped burner phone numbers, a gift from Gary. The phones were the cheap variety, not smartphones, and dropping one in a dumpster would be painless. Mike wasn't improving, and Stanton said he would be moving on too in a few more weeks, leaving me facing the horror of just me and Mike meeting up once a week. The initial shock of finding out my kind were a prized treasure hunted by human cultists subsided into a nervous tick, always looking over my shoulder, expecting trouble. It was after my 4th meet and greet that things got truly awful. I arrived home after my shift at the gas station, to find my mom face down on the kitchen floor. That time blurs into a few bitter, shiny memories for me. The 911 call, the frantic attempts to get hold of my brothers, Cody and Dale. Sitting in the emergency ward, holding mom's hand, the heart monitor hitting that tone. I got hold of Dale first, on duty at some army base somewhere. "Dale, it's James." "James, what's up?" And then I couldn't speak. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yeah. I barely managed." "Is Mom okay?" he said calmly. "No," was as much as I could mumble. There was a moment's quiet, and the sounds of barracks life leaked through. The world seemed to stop. Dale spoke calmly. "Is Mom in a hospital?" "Yeah." "Is she ever walking out?" I couldn't raise the word no, I just sobbed. "It's important, James, for arranging compassionate leave, I have to know absolutely. Is Mom dead?" His voice cracked a little at that. "Uh-huh. I managed, like a little kid." "Okay. I'll arrange to get there as soon as I can, couple of days, maybe 3. Hang tight. I'm coming." "Does Cody know?" "No." "Okay. I'll call him. Don't worry about a thing. We'll work it all out when I get there." And that was my introduction to my feeble ability to deal with a real-life crisis. The hospital rang the insurance company, they sent someone over, and the wheels starting turning for a funeral. You see, Mom had it all worked out, years ago. She paid into a funeral plan, had things arranged, just in case. All we had to do was show up to the funeral. It was so unreal, but that was Mom, thinking of us and how to make it easier for her boys. Dale got a red eye, and was home 36 hours later. Cody arrived about 4 hours after Dale. First Dale and I caught up, then we fetched Cody from the bus station, long faces all around. The funeral was held the next day. No one had slept much, what can I say? It was the worst moment of my adult life, but, by some miracle my brothers and I pulled it together. She left us the house freehold, and 10 grand Mom had saved, somehow. Dale had power of attorney and by Mom's final wishes, handed us both $2,000. He put his share into an account to pay house bills. There were no fights, no harsh words, we just got on with it. Dale had to return to base, and Cody had to get back to university. I've never felt more alone, when those two waved at me from the bus. A week later, there was a knock on my door. "Hi, I'm Nancy, I was a friend of your Mom's. She asked me to give you this." Nancy handed me a letter. Mom said Nancy would pack up her clothes and take them to a charity. I just held the letter, eyes brimming, as Nancy waited on the doorstep. I remembering stepping aside and saying, "Thanks." And like that, my mother's presence was almost completely removed from the house. Crowbill is not your friend. I arrived at the rail bridge just before sunset. Stanton was still there, which I kinda hoped for. So was Mike, he was still pale as a corpse. "You okay, James?" Stanton asked. "Mom died." Silence. "Oh shit, man, sorry to hear that," Stanton said, and he offered his hand. I shook it weakly. "Mike," I said in greeting. He coughed and nodded. We sat around a decent fire Stanton had made, and drank cheap bourbon from a shared bottle. "What you gonna do?" Mike asked. "You gonna stay in town?" "Yeah, I think so. If things are all squared away, man, get out of this town for a break," Stanton said. "See the world a bit." I nodded. "Well hell," said a voice from behind me. "If it ain't Stanton, who somehow forgot to invite me to a soiree." I stood and looked at the approaching stranger. He was tall, fit, and muscular. But older than Stanton, maybe around 60 years old. "Who's that?" I asked Stanton. He rolled his eyes. "That," he said unimpressed, "is Crow Bill. Afternoon, gentlemen. Bill is my name, but I go by Crow Bill." He shook everyone's hands, and sat down. He retrieved a bottle from a bag. It was aged bourbon, the really good stuff. "How did you find me, Bill?" Stanton asked. "Oddly enough, this town is on my way to my new digs. I got a sense of you when I stopped for gas and supplies. I'm heading into the wild, the deep forest, thought I'd make the offer again." I looked at Crow Bill. He was grizzled, like he'd been outdoors for decades, but his eyes were bright, and he radiated health. He looked at Mike. "You ain't been eating. You gotta eat, son. You'll die if you don't." He sat back and sipped his bourbon. "Yeah. Eaters gotta eat, or he gets sick," asked Stanton. "I taught him how to hunt. Hell, I taught him almost all I know." Crowbill smiled at that. Stanton frowned. "I'm not much for hunting these days, Bill," he said. "Do you well too? You stay full longer, keeps you healthy?" Bill added. I had to ask. "What do you hunt?" Crowbill looked at me, and his wild stare softened a little. "Deer. Like we're meant to. You ain't been taught, I can see it." He nodded at his own wisdom. "But we aren't meant to be eating pets and people." He eyeballed Mike hard. Mike flinched. "We're meant to hunt big game, death with dignity, give meaning to your killing." Mike coughed hard, and Stanton just sipped his booze. "You there, you been hunting?" "Deer, I mean?" Crowbill asked me. "Nah," I said. "Bill will teach you. If you want, learn to live like a predator. Like a lion." Stanton looked sternly at Bill. "Not everyone needs your brand of religion, Bill." Bill shrugged. "Crowbill ain't no holy man, but you can live with a clean conscience. Hunting game is clean killing." He looked hard at Mike again. "I was taught proper, by my granddaddy. I've been up and down the spines of most of this country's mountains. I have sent the greatest of God's animals on their way, and with humility in my heart. Grateful for their life." He looked at us all, one by one. Imagine that. Crowbill sat his bottle down for us to finish. He stood, and passed me a slip of paper, with a phone number on it. "Be seeing ya," he said, and he put a two-finger salute to his temple and flicked his hand as he left. When he was well and truly gone, Stanton looked at me and said, "Crowbill is not your friend." "Why's that?" I said. "He wants to reform people like us, make us respectable. But, I think he's fooling himself. We're not human, are we?" I looked at the fire, and shrugged. There was the sound of heavy running footsteps, and Crowbill charged back into our gathering. It was so fast, it was inhumanly quick. "We got a visitor," he said quietly to Stanton. We all stood, even Mike. The sun had set, and the light was fading fast. Out of the twilight, from the path we used, emerged a hulking shadow. It shambled, like it could only mimic walking, and its form seemed to parody a human's, and expertly, like it wore a skin suit. "What is that?" Mike hissed. "Stay calm. Don't piss him off," Crowbill said. "It could kill us all in a heartbeat." The thing hobbled into the radius of the campfire light. It was huge, and really did look like it was wearing a stretchy human skin suit, over an oddly formed body. Its arms were too long, and its clawed fingertips grazed the dirt as it walked. One eye was bulging around its left cheek. and the other was so far back in the socket, it looked like it only had one eye. "Keep your voices low. Don't approach it. It's drawn to us, because of what we are," Crowbill whispered. "What's it want?" I said with an unsteady voice. "Dunno. But I do know you don't mess with them." "There's more than one?" Crowbill nodded. "I call them a baggie, on account of how they look like a bag of skin." Baggie stood just at the edge of the firelight, and turned its grotesque head to look at each one of us. After a dense and long wait, it sniffed and snuffled loudly, and with a rapid forward and back rocking of its head it let out a loud hoo-oop. Far off, came a reply, in the same fashion. My blood froze, so this thing was what I had seen that night about a year ago. Baggie stared at me for a long time, and then slowly turned and trudged away. "I've seen one of these before. About a year ago," I whispered. We all kept standing, and after about 10 minutes, finally relaxed just enough to talk. "I thought it was gonna kill us," Stanton said. Mike sat and coughed. I looked at him. He was obviously dying, as far as I could tell. His guilt was killing him. I thought about Crowbill's offer, clean kills and a clear conscience. "Where did Baggie come from?" I asked Bill. "Only Mama Tambo knows that. She's like a medicine woman, or a witch, depending on your point of view. I ain't never met her face to face, only in dreams or visions. She lives in the no man's land between America and Mexico." "There's no such place," I said. "Humph." Bill snorted. "Her land is invite only, you can't find it unless she wants you to, and you can't get in or out, unless she wants it. I'd go, but she ain't invited me yet." More weirdness. Great, I thought, what's next? She knows about us, why we are what we are, and she knows the secret history of the world. She whispered this to me in dreams. I smirked. Bill looked at me unimpressed. "Knowing what you can do, you doubt dreams and visions?" he said bluntly. He had a point. We all got tired of peering into the darkness, plus we were all feeling a little drunk. We sat back down and smiled nervously. "I best be off then," Crowbill said eventually. But he stayed seated for another 10 minutes, looking over his should now and then. I spent the rest of the week getting ready to hit the road. I let Dale know I was getting out of town for a while. No drama. And then, I called Crowbill. I learned to hunt. I spent a while with Crowbill, got a gun license, and hunted deer the human way. The more I did it, with him teaching me, the better I got. Bill was right, my senses all seemed to jump up a notch. I got quieter, and quicker. Had anyone seen us, moving inhumanly fast, and silently, they'd have a tale to tell. A day came, when Bill took my rifle, and slung it on his back. "I'll draw the deer out, he'll come to me, but it will be an effort. When I have him close enough, you rush him, and take his heart, like I taught you." Bill and I had been stalking a large buck, good antlers, a good catch if we bagged it. He stalked it, got to within 20 feet, and locked eyes on it. The deer flinched, stepped sideways, waving its head up and down. He had it, locked to his gaze. I rushed it, it saw me, and tried to rear up to run. But it was too late. I pushed my face deep into the muscles behind its shoulder, hanging on for all I was worth. I opened my mouth, and a second later, I swallowed its still quivering heart. Just like Gary had said we could. I detached and turned my face to one side, to avoid a gush of hot blood. We're not vampires and I had no desire to drink the deer's blood. It dropped to the forest floor, and Bill walked over to me, grabbed me by the shoulder and shook me in pride. "Clean kill. Death with dignity. We're lions," he said quietly, but with an intense pride. I got a cheap car, and traveled up and down the highway to Crowbill's place most weekends. We'd hunt like lions, and carry enormous amounts of meat to his place, and traded for stuff Bill needed. He threw me some money from time to time. Winter came, and we slowed down. Midwinter, Stanton rang me, to tell me Mike was dead. "Oh," was all I could conjure up. "I did it," said Stanton. A chill went down my spine. I ate him," he said with a decent amount of shame in his voice. "Uh-huh," I said calmly. And he hung up. I told Bill. "We don't eat our own," Crowbill had hissed, teeth grit firmly together. "We become actual monsters, just like we do if we eat the long dead." He looked at me hard. "Don't ever eat one of us, James. You can't come back from that." 5 times. He held up his hand, fingers splayed to emphasize his words. "And you're gone for good." Near the end of winter, I asked Crowbill, Where do I go to find Mama Tambo? Hard to say. Head to the border, between Texas and Mexico, somewhere in that area. If she wants you to find her, she'll let you know. I thanked him for everything, and we parted as friends. I wasn't sure of what the hell I was doing, on my own for real this time, but I drove south. It was the first of several spectacularly bad ideas. We're all monsters but I'm different, Part 6. I drove south in my tired old car. American-made meant something when they built it. It didn't let me down. I'd never been further than a few trips to the nearest big city, and then I was with family. I was on my own now. It really started to dawn on me, my only backup now was my brothers, and they were otherwise busy. I held Gary's offer in reserve. If I ever screwed up really badly, I'd call him. With that in mind I had memorized his number, and the numbers of the others. And, I suppose, maybe, just maybe, I could call on Crow Bill. He spent so much time in the wild, it would be a stroke of luck to catch him at home. He didn't use a cell phone. That dude still had a landline. Around 200 miles south, I stopped for a leak on a quiet stretch of road that passed through untouched forest. It was eerie. I felt it the moment I stepped out of the car. No birds, just the sound of the wind, and tree branches knocking together. I had the feeling I was being watched, and my monster senses screamed danger, not imminent, but soon if I lingered. I marked the spot on the handheld GPS I had recently purchased, and named the tag. Danger, don't stop here. Then I got the hell out of there. My road trip is worth a story on its own. I had some accidental adventures, and I met a woman I wish I'd stayed with. Wished I could have stayed with. But, if you've been following my mad ramblings, you know that can't happen. Eventually, I arrived in the state of Texas at the start of spring, and decided to get some dirt on the border. After a few humorous and ham-fisted attempts at infiltrating some pro-open borders groups, I finally managed to slip into a group of naive students, who wanted a borderless world. At that stage, I really didn't care much about open borders. I had other things to worry about. I wish I knew then, what I know now, I'd find a way to convince those kids to stay the hell away from it. I say that with mixed feelings. There are dangers on the border, and I'm just one of them. There are human monsters there too, as you will see. I was young enough to pass for a college kid, and I looked good. I was fit and healthy, and I went there with two of the girls in the group. What can I say? I was finally living. We'd agitate for changes to legislation, and joined with other groups for big marches, and bit by bit I got some actual usable information. I never thought of them as friends, but they were by and large decent enough, but they had a rosy idea of how the world should be. I was convinced I would have to cross the border, eventually, if I wanted to find Mama Tambo. It had been a while since I had eaten. It was starting to bug me. It turns out Texas has a wild hog problem. After I was done, I'd say it's improved somewhat. They're stubborn and hard to hold in a trance. Not quite as satisfying as a deer. With my monster tank filled, from time to time, I could focus on finding the people smuggling routes. I wanted to use one, to head south. You have to laugh at that. A gringo breaking into Mexico. But really that's no joke. I came close to being picked up by the FBI, the Border Patrol and the local police in several border towns. I got the impression I was on their radar now, so I backed off. I said my goodbyes, spent one last night in a warm bed with an eager young woman, and grabbed a pork snack from the Texas brush on the way down the road. I drove back and forth along the border for weeks, texting Dale and Cody now and then, staying in touch. All the time hoping for a hint of a way into Mama Tambo's private universe. I had intended to sniff out at people smuggling routes, but about a dozen different things happened instead. I had some newbie near misses with dying in the desert, well brush and scrub, but it was hot. And that humbled me. I took to walking trails, with tours, and went over the old history of the Texas Revolution. I met tourists, and walked up and down the Rio Grande. It was actually fun. By this time I was flirting with confidence. It's possible, but risky, to have a quickie on a desert trail. Honestly, time of my life. Then I had my first encounter on the border, that changed everything. I had enough miles under my belt, to free range while dodging border patrol, into Mexico. There are some easy places to cross, and I was cheating, not being human at all. I woke early one morning, from an improvised camp, to the smell of death. Things decay fast in the heat, and I could smell it from literally miles away. Oddly it didn't offend me. It smelled strange, neither bad nor good. I tracked the smell, and encountered my first dead border jumping hopeful. He'd been shot in the back of the head, and robbed. Yes, I went through his pockets and backpack. I have bills too. I tracked the footprints leading back into the Mexican scrub, and after a while, I smelled more death. I was all over the local map, until I worked out what had happened. Someone was working the people smuggling train, knocking off victims, and robbing them. That sobered me up. As a result of free-ranging, I stumbled on actual victims of the local conditions, or poor health, or poor preparation. I amassed a small sum of cash, by picking over those poor souls who fell on the unofficial trails heading north. I did this, for quite some time, and it was early summer before the traffic dropped off and I gave up. I traveled from town to town. But it was apparent to me by then that the trails had dried up. Professional people smugglers were using trucks. You had to be poor or desperate to try it on foot. And then weird thing number 2 happened. I stood in rough brushland, staring at the prayer mats, and the litter wondering what I had found. It took a while for it to click. I had been taught that those crossing the border were from South American countries, but as time went by I learned that the entire world was jumping the Mexican border into America. Including Syrians fresh from either fighting against ISIS or fighting for it, I'm not sure which. That cooled my wanderlust for a while. I had a gun license, and I considered buying a handgun, just in case. But I held off. Something else stirred in me. I could hunt deer and boar on foot unarmed and take them. Why the hell did I need a gun? I had smelt the cartels too, or factions of them, guiding people on foot from time to time to the fence. Those guys seemed to fill 2 categories, professionals and thugs. The thugs would lead and bleed, and run off with the cash. The pros would get their customers safely over the border. Turns out those 2 categories are interchangeable. The stars are new. Everything changed, for me, in one short night. I had sniffed my way across the scrublands, death was floating on the wind, and maybe some free money with it. What I found, was sign of a mass grave. There were earth-moving equipment tracks, and some disturbed dirt, that and a scent. Someone had been keen enough to bring a front-end loader all the way out here. I followed the tire tracks of the truck that hauled it. Miles later, I encountered a small house, in the middle of nowhere. An SUV, parked beside it, 3 men inside. My senses went into overdrive. Sobbing, and begging in the scrub near a freshly dug grave, was a Latino girl, maybe 14 or 15. Her tormentor was saying how much fun he was going to have with her. She was begging for her life. I had picked up enough Spanish to work that out. I was in 2 minds. She's not my problem, I told myself. Walk away. Maybe I should have. I ran in to attack him. I was so fast, I hit so hard, as a hunter, as a lion, as a monster. I took him in a ferocious one-handed grip by the throat, lifted him off the ground by his belt and held him there for a second. Perhaps, I should mention, the moon was full. His heart was hammering in his chest. I could sense he was superstitious, which is ironic considering I'm not. I was in the heat of my hunt. I felt warmth flowing through me, a joy, and a love for this rapist piece of shit. We could be together. Forever. I remembered briefly what Gary said. We don't have to kill, there are other ways. And then there is this way. I sucked his heart out, my mouth automatically punched a hole through his ribs. I still don't know how that works. He let out a half-throttle yelp, and dropped twitching to the ground. The glow, inside me, was euphoric. The young girl was hysterical. I had no interest in eating her, but I didn't want to leave her here either. I was torn between the contents of the shack, and helping her to escape. It took a while, but I calmed her down with soothing words. Either that or I tranced her. I really hope I didn't. Can you drive? See. I pointed to the SUV. You take that. And go, when I say go. See. We checked out the cab. It was unlocked with keys in the ignition. She was shaking badly, so I helped her climb into the vehicle, then I circled the house. There were 3 inside, and I loved them all intensely. We were going to be together. I stood facing the wall of the house that faced the faraway US border. I gave her the thumbs up, and mouthed go. The girl started the SUV, so much for their security. The men started to get up from their booze and smokes, to make for the front door. I smashed a hole through that wall like it was tissue paper. One of the men had his back to me. Before he could turn, I grabbed the back of his neck and belt. I smashed my face into his back, and sucked his heart out. He didn't even get a cry out, it was so quick. The other 2 were falling over themselves to level their guns at me. They were so slow. It was like they were underwater, they couldn't move quickly enough. Something about their plight moved me. I wanted them to run outdoors, into the night and never look back. If they could escape I'd let them go, I lied to myself. I sidestepped right, Throwing the former cartel gunman at one of his peers, I made a beeline for number 3. His hand was fully extended, handgun at the ready, his aim was off, and I was far too fast for him. A bullet went sailing into the night, as I grabbed his gun hand and pushed it high above his head. Somehow I grabbed him by his jaw, my fingers deep in his mouth and my thumb punching a hole under his chin. He went to bite me, but by that time I was swallowing his heart. While my chest was brimming with joy and love, I threw his body like a rag doll out through a wall into the night. Number 2 by this time had just managed to blind fire at me while running for the door. I swear, I saw the bullets traveling leisurely by like Sunday drivers out for cruise. I cleared the room and had his neck in my left hand, while my right hand picked him off the ground by the belt, slamming him into the front door. He screamed, and I buried my face between his shoulder blades. Diablo, he managed, just as his heart started to tear away from his chest. I dropped his body, and gently opened the front door, walking out into an alien night. My eyes were brimming with tears, I was fit to bust with ecstasy, the warmth in me grew into a bonfire. I was so grateful, so overwhelmed with gratitude, I wept in euphoria. I looked up, and the sky was shades of pale gray and white, the stars were razor-sharp pinpoints. The Milky Way was laid out before me like a lace of dark gray clouds, dust, nebulae, and constellations. The light from the stars was different, I was seeing the position and status of each star in real time at their source. There was no gulf of time between me and the galaxy, it was all new, and now. I stood for an hour, I think, staring at the sky. Red-hot tears of joy cooled on my cheek, the blaze in my chest settled into serene contentment, I was a monster at peace. I watched a long-eared coyote approach me, from far away. It was in good health and fit. It fearlessly walked to within 10 feet of me, and sat down. A black cigarillo appeared from somewhere between its lips, the tip burst into flame and smoldered, the coyote inhaled deeply. The red-hot coals of his cigarillo were echoed in the orange glowing irises of his eyes. "I know you're here," it said in a strange, ancient voice. Darkness engulfed us, until only its coal-fire eyes and cigarillo remained visible. Did I hear a hoo-oop cry in the distance? I woke groggily, having finally curled up under a dry river embankment, and despite sleeping rough, I stretched easily and yawned contentedly. The sky was a mundane gray and overcast, a mist of sorts was glazing the landscape with some hint of rain to come. I stood and recognized the spot. It was an old haunt of mine, a landmark I used to orientate myself on the border. I traveled a long way in the night. There were rolls of cash in my pockets, not sure where I got that from. I recovered a stashed backpack, and changed into clean clothes, and I brushed my teeth. The night's events were dull in my mind, I felt neither guilt nor shame, I was actually quite hungry. I made my way back to civilization, and a day and a half later, I was lounging in a bathtub of a 5-star hotel. All paid for courtesy of 4 ex-cartel gunmen. At that point in my life, I was starting to feel fairly cocky. But, times change. We're all monsters but I'm different, Part 7. I'm not myself. I ended up just lounging around the hotel after my rampage in the Mexican wilderness. I had trouble sleeping. It wasn't guilt, to be clear, in fact I felt indifferent to that event. Like it didn't really matter much. That should have been a red flag. I'm not usually that callous, something had changed in me. I could feel something of them, moving around in me, echoes of their memories. 3 of the dead were similar, filled with anger, lust and a desire to do violence at the drop of a hat. The 4th, the man I killed as he reached the door, was different. I felt his sorrow, his deep regret, and a self-loathing that comes from pretending to be someone he wasn't. I had flashes of alien memories, murders, rapes, and places visited. Childhood memories mixed in with mass murder, criminal activity and the torture of victims. I had a vivid nightmare. My victims sat around a table in their desert shack, their hearts sitting in front of them, still beating. We were playing highest card wins, picking cards of a deck in turn, and then revealing them all at once. I kept drawing the highest card, and one by one, I ate their hearts. Then it was just me and victim number 4. He turned over a joker, and I turned over the ace of spades. He gave me a sour smile, and pushed his heart across the table to me. "You won the game," he said bitterly. "But you won't win them all." I looked down at the table, the beating heart still connected to arteries through a gaping chest wound, was mine. I reached down, and ate it. I awoke in terror, no more sleep for me that night. After 7 days of insomnia, and constant haunting, I decided I needed to get back out into the wilderness. The desert might cure me of this funk, I thought, but something else was driving me. I won't lie, and say I turned over a new leaf. I didn't, I went hunting. I started tracking cartel men. I had visions of their faces in my mind from dead men's memories, and some bloody internal compass pointed me to them. Many were deep inside Mexican territory, some were surprisingly far north, well beyond the border. I started to stalk those closest. I went into Mexican towns and cities, eventually liberating a cartel car, and its owner's heart. I hunted up and down the border, about 80 miles or more inside Mexico. I picked men off. Some by themselves, some in pairs. I was stacking ghosts at an alarming rate, but I was unmoved. I had gone beyond justifying it to myself, I did it because I could. Eventually, El Diablo became a thing. The gangs were getting nervous and started constantly traveling in groups of 4 or more. No more midnight runs for cigarettes, they went into lockdown. It didn't matter, I just moved on, into new territory. The bodies were piling up, and I eventually absorbed the memories of a man who'd attended a meeting of minor bosses. They had been blaming each other for staff losses, but they realized something weird was going on. They had assumed it was a new cartel, or the CIA. But someone caught me on security camera, they knew what I could do, and had an idea of what I looked like. But what caught my attention was the image of a house that came up again and again, a house with piles of money. La Hacienda. It took a few weeks, but I finally found the right town, and the right house. On the way there I brought myself a little gift, and pocketed it for future use. I watched, and waited until nightfall, passing the hours alert and hungry. There was some traffic in and out of the house nestled inside a high-walled compound, but it settled down around 7 in the evening. It was rather nondescript, no armed guards patrolled the grounds, and it could easily pass the just an ordinary house test. Sensing a kind of drowsiness coming over the occupants, I slipped on the cloth wrestling mask and jumped the wall in an easy leap. Now I was a crime-fighting superhero. Yay me. I paused at the end of a disheveled garden, which was being landscaped, and watched the house a moment longer. Security cameras. Well, as long as the mask stays on, I didn't care. You can cover a lot of ground running at 40 miles an hour. Running to the side of the house I jumped straight up just below a balcony, and landed silently. Everything slowed down, my senses sharpened, and I could hear and nearly see the occupants. Breathing, heartbeats, and movement. The house walls were almost transparent to me. A large collection of people occupied an upstairs room. That made no sense. Downstairs, 5 men talked and drank. I decided to check out the top floor before causing mayhem. The sliding door to the bedroom next to the balcony was locked, but the window was ajar. It had a security latch keeping it from opening wide. I twisted it slowly, and it broke quietly. I was in. The room was modern and tidy. I moved across to the upstairs corridor and carefully sniffed the air. Sneaking like a cat burglar from a budget movie, I hammed up it, creeping like a cartoon villain just to amuse myself. I listened at the room with the massive bodies, dozing or lying quietly. Something was well off. I smelled sorrow and fear. This was not a happy slumber party. I turned the door handle carefully, and nudged the door open, all the while listening for the men below. The room was lit by the external street light passing through thin curtains. 5 women were held captive. They were shackled to a bar mounted to the floor. In the corner of the room was a bed. They lay on cheap mattresses. One stirred and looked at me. Fear grew in her and she began to weep soundlessly. I gestured gently. Rescate. Seguro. She looked unconvinced. I need her to keep calm. One scream and I'd lose the element of surprise. Libertad. I pointed to the window, and the world beyond. Escapar. Then I quietly tapped my chest. Libertad door. There was a stirring in the room, and some more fright, some hushing and quick whispering about who the freak at the door was. All 5 women were now awake. I slipped into the room and carefully shut the door. Pointing to the padlocks keeping them chained, I asked. ¿Quién tiene la llave? Who has the key? A woman, eyes dark and gaunt, pointed to her throat. El hombre con un tatuaje aquí, she whispered. I nodded entiendo, I understand. Maybe I could have broken the locks, but I doubted myself. There was movement from below. I even turned my head to listen. Alguien viene, I whispered, as footsteps came from the end of the corridor. I hissed, todo estará bien. I flattened myself against the wall near the door. I'd be the first thing he saw when the door opened. I had to be quick. The door handle turned, and he stepped inside. I grabbed his throat, squeezing his windpipe closed, and pushed him to the ground so quickly he didn't even croak a yelp. I was flush with a profound and deep love for him. It was an awe-inspiring affection, Time literally stopped as I admired the figure pushed into the carpet before me. I drove my mouth into his back, and his heart popped out through a small hole between his shoulder blades, filling me with a nuclear explosion of joy and gratitude. There were gasps, and I felt the women move further from me. I had hoped the room was too dark to see my attack. Guess not. El Diablo, someone said. Sí, I whispered back. No para las señoras, ¿estás seguro? I didn't look at them, just in case the heat of the hunt disputed that. I picked the dead man up, and easily carried him into the bedroom opposite their prison. A second set of footsteps came up the stairs. I slipped the door almost shut, ready for another snatch and grab. The man stopped before he reached the woman's prison cell. I looked down at the carpet in the bedroom. Blood. Lots and lots of blood. Oh, crap, I thought to myself. There was a quick retreat from the hallway, and rapid hushed chatter from below, then someone called out. A joking voice said the equivalent of, "Hey Miguel, the boss is on the phone, come back down." Yeah, there was also the sound of guns being cocked. I looked around me. I could call it quits and go, just leap out a window and bolt for the fence. I looked at the floor, it was transparent. I did a double take. I could see a man below, holding a shotgun. I glanced up, city light-stained cloud and a few stars. I felt the love for my prey run out of me, like ice water. It was replaced with a pure love of power. I bunched up in a crouch, and then leapt up. The world virtually stopped spinning. I smashed straight through the floor, landing in a shower of debris and plaster behind the gunman. I grabbed him from behind and sucked his heart out, punching through his spinal column, which erupted from his shattered back, in a shower of blood. Two men turned slowly, too slowly towards me. One was waiting at the foot of the stairs, the other in the middle of the room, automatic rifles at the ready. I threw my victim at the nearest. Both bodies exploded out through a glass sliding door, and they landed heavily 20 feet away in the garden. The guy near the stairs panic-fired my way. I took 3 giant steps and kicked a heavy chair at him. It cleared the room nearly instantly, and it smashed him through the wall. I felt him die. His spirit, or soul, just winked out. Glass crunched underfoot, as I strode towards the man with a tattooed neck in the garden. He was wrecked, probably dying. He was still trying to raise himself up onto his elbows. Blood was streaming from his nose and mouth, and he barely saw me as I knelt next to him. "Donde está la llave?" I asked. "Wha?" He spat blood, and lowered himself trembling, to the grass. "Las mujeres." I pointed to the house. "Donde está la llave?" I repeated. He was fading fast, so I checked his pockets, and found a key ring complete with car keys. I don't know why, but something like pity came over me, as he lay shuddering on the ground. It was a dreadful sight. I killed quickly, and this was a crap way to die. I patted him on the shoulder, as his shaking and rasping breath stopped. "Adios amigo." Back inside I sniffed out the hiding place of the loot I had hoped was there. I found a black duffel bag under the floor beneath a sink. It was filled with money, wrapped in plastic like they do at a bank. I had never seen so much cash, and it was all new, and all American. That confused me. Why do they have so many gringo dollars? Not that it mattered, it was coming with me. I went back upstairs, and unlocked the women's chains. They rubbed their ankles, and looked cautiously at me. "¿Qué hacemos ahora?" one lady asked me. I opened the bag, and handed each of them a slab of Ben Franklin's for their troubles. "Salir de México, no vuelvas que? Correr desde México to Español no es bueno," someone said. "Sí," I agreed, "my Spanish is no good." I lead them downstairs, and took them into the garage. There was yet another black 3-liter SUV parked inside. We left in Tattoo Man's truck. I dropped them off in a different town, at a decent hotel. Then I drove to the border, and dumped the vehicle. It took a couple of days to get back into the United States. I was glad to be home. One good thing. I had been running for too long. The adrenaline took its toll on me, not my adrenaline, my victims. It puts a load on the liver to process it, and I was getting frazzled. It was winter, I needed to hibernate for a while. I rented a place in Laredo, right next to the border. I spent nights just staring at the walls, or watching monotonous TV. I stayed away from bars, just in case I tranced some poor woman. I was growing afraid of myself. One night cabin fever got to me, and decided to go out for a walk along the river. I began picking myself apart. I'd done too much killing, things I couldn't fix, and I was filled with the ghosts of the dead. A kind of melancholy crept into me. Would I carry my dead victims forever? After about an hour, The smell of death blew my way. Reluctantly I followed it. I heard sobbing first, and it took another quarter hour to locate the source. I was in no hurry. "Papa." A child's voice. I almost turned around then. Like I needed this in my day. But I told myself, if I could do at least one decent thing, perhaps I could square some of this mad life with my soul. I found a young boy, hugging his father, who lay face down on the cold ground. "Hey," I said. "Papa." The boy yelled, and he looked at me with a mix of fear and pleading. "Ayuda mi papa," he cried. I crouched down beside his father. I could tell he was long gone. But I made the effort to roll him onto his back, and I listened to his chest. He was damp, like he'd been in water recently. I sat back up, and shook my head solemnly. "Tu padre está muerto," I said, "lo siento." The boy hugged his father and cried. I backed off, and left him to his grief. I figured sooner than later the border patrol would swing by, and pick him up. We were so close to town they couldn't miss him. And then, I had a truly, spectacularly bad idea. I'd help him instead. "¿Cuál es tu nombre?" "Arturo," he mumbled. "James," I said, tapping my chest. "Donde está tu mamá?" "En cielo," he said and pointed to the sky. "In heaven?" "Sí." I pointed to his father, "Telefono," and I held up my budget cell phone. Arturo pointed to a backpack. "I'm just going to look for Papa's phone, okay?" He nodded, but looked uncertain. He was probably around 8, poor kid. Everything was in Spanish, and the phone was a simple model, but I managed to find his contacts. "El tío?" I asked. "Sí." Great, he had family alive somewhere. I pointed back across the river. "El tío in Mexico?" "Sí." He started saying a lot, in Spanish, too fast and rich for me to catch, so I showed him the contacts list on his dad's phone. He pointed to a name and number. "El tío. Your father's brother." I pointed at his dad. "El tío is Papa's hermano?" He just nodded. "Okay." I pushed dial on his father's phone. It was early evening. I hoped he was home. The phone rang a while and then a man's voice answered the call. "Hola, Miguel? ¿Estás en Texas? I'm calling on behalf of your nephew, Arturo. ¿Tú hablas inglés?" "Sí, yes, I speak English. Who are you?" "I'm with your nephew, Arturo. He's okay." I handed the phone to Arturo. The kid talked for a while. There were more tears, and I heard cries and strong emotion coming through the tinny phone speaker. After a while the kid handed me the phone. The man's voice was shaky, but he was trying to keep it together. "We can't cross the border, into Texas, no pasaporte. Can you bring him to us?" I sighed. Damn it, now I was stuck with the kid. Dumb. "See," I said. "I'll get them both across the river, and call you." "Both?" he said puzzled. "See. Leave it to me." There were more questions, and more arrangements, but in short I was now taking Arturo across the Rio Grande. Not normally a problem for me, but now I had a kid and a corpse to carry. "Arturo, did you cross in a boat?" "See." He seemed uncertain with that yes. To cut a long story short, I found his father's makeshift raft, and put my monstrous hunting strength to good use for a change. I carried his father to the river, got them both safely on the raft and paddled across. I took a while to get across, and then back upstream. I found a dirt road, and we walked for a while. I called his uncle, and told him where we were, gave him some map coordinates. And we waited. I made a makeshift bed for Arturo. He slept a little, and I watched over him as he twitched and mumbled. At dawn, his uncle showed up, with 2 hefty-looking friends. There were a lot of tears. I looked away, tried to keep a respectful distance. We loaded the dead man onto the back of his truck, and they covered him with a blanket. They showed him a lot of respect and said some prayers. I don't know why, but I felt useless. I retrieved a fat roll of US dollars from my pocket, and offered them to the uncle. He was confused. Maybe a little offended. "For the funeral?" "No, not needed." He started. "Please," I said and hoped I looked sincere. He nodded, and took the money. "Gracias," he said solemnly. He offered me a ride, but I turned it down. And with that, they drove off into a Mexican sunrise. The dawn carried a mixture of cold air, the smells of nature, and a distant scent I knew too well. One good thing will never be enough, I said to myself, as dead men's ghosts churned inside me. I sniffed the air. Time to go hunting. We're all monsters but I'm different, Part 8. Mexico in winter. I drifted far from the border. Deeper into Mexico, and further from the small town loner I once was. I brought an okay car, began driving around without a plan. Sending the odd message to my brothers, but mostly keeping to myself. I had fun, being the gringo. I'd go to bars, get drunk on tequila, piss off the locals, and let them kick my ass. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe I was trying to head off karma, not that I could. Cuts and bruises disappeared in minutes, black eyes faded quickly. Pain was dull and brief, sharp pain vanished altogether, aches just stopped after a minute or two. I was as far from human as I'd ever been, and always, the sense grew, that there was so much more to this dark power. I might have gone on that way forever. And then, I met Gail. Some half-assed college had arranged a cultural exchange, a busload of Spanish majors unloaded in my hotel lobby. Their Spanish made the staff giggle under their breath. It had been a long time, between rest stops in normal company, and I was hungry for some human contact. The kind that doesn't end with eating someone's heart. They were old enough to drink, and I befriended them in the hotel bar. After an hour I suggested we go to a decent club I frequented. The drinks were cheaper there, the hotel was charging more if you were an American. It was a good night. I made eyes at Gail, slowly warming to her. She wasn't interested. I let it be. They toured the city, visited the sights and ancient ruins, and I caught up with them that night. They were too tired to party, but I suggested a quiet meal at my favorite local restaurant. I'd pay. What the hell, right? I'm rich. Dead men's ghosts are a small price to pay, and they were quieter when I was with people. Nights alone can be hard. We ate, drank some really good tequila, and left a positive impression. On our return to the hotel, Gail spoke to me in the lift. Thanks for the meal. No problem. So, you're here on business? Sure. What do you do? I looked her in the eyes, a second too long, and saw the first glimmer of interest. I'm kind of a debt collector. That had her frowning and smiling. What do you even call that expression? Isn't that dangerous? Very, I said with a grin. She looked at me sideways, curious but unconvinced. The next day, they packed up, and moved on to another city. I saw them off at breakfast. Gail gave me a long look, from the bus window as it moved off. Her head dipped, and when she looked back up at me, I could tell she was interested. I watched the bus go, and decided, maybe it was time for me to move on too. I had no idea where they were going, but I must have picked up a hint at dinner, because 2 days later, I caught up with them. You following me? Gail asked, appearing out of nowhere in a hotel car park. Yeah. That money you loaned, they want it back, I joked. Which loan? She laughed. I smiled at that. Come with? She thumbed over her shoulder. We're having lunch. "'Kay," I said casually. And that was the start of my honorary induction into the tour. Over the next week, I went where they went, actually learned something too. We spent time together as a group. Gail was friendly but wary. I grew to like her a lot. I knew I was in trouble when I thought of her not being around, and it bothered me. I told myself, beat a hasty retreat, before I screwed up her life. One evening we sat together, just Gail and I, under an umbrella as a light rain fell. The wind occasionally blew misty beads onto us, and Gail ended up fringed in a halo of tiny water droplets. I could see every strand of hair on her head, decorated like a Christmas tree. She talked, about her studies, then family, then hopes and dreams. I hadn't engineered this meeting, it only occurs to me now, that maybe she had. Why are you in Mexico, really? She said, with a serious face. I really do recover debts, but I kinda fell into it. It wasn't my plan. What was your plan? I was looking for someone. But so far no luck. Gail sipped her beer, and leaned back in her seat, fine beads of mist collecting on her eyelashes. What's it like? Debt collecting? I shrugged, and had to look away. What the hell do I say to that? There's screaming and yelling, guns are often present. People try to hurt me, I don't let them, I walk away with what I came for. It's not pretty. She sat up in her seat, puzzled look on her face. Then why do it? I smiled, and looked her in the eyes. I like it, I said honestly. Some instinct in her must have fired up, because she sat back quickly, and gave me a concerned look. She finally said quietly, "Are you going to be bad for me?" Like she wasn't sure she wanted to ask. My heart skipped a beat, we were eyeballing each other non-stop now. I could see every pore in her skin with complete clarity. "I'll never hurt you, Gail," I said. "But one day soon, you'll head back to America, and I won't." She reached across the table, and I took her hand halfway. For the final few days of the cultural tour, I stayed out of the way. But the nights, They were Gales and we got almost no sleep. She kept up, somehow, with all the late night trips into towns, bars and restaurants. We ate, we danced, and I fell for her like no one before. The last night together, yeah, I won't write about it. It's mine and hers, it's the one tiny candlelight in a long dark night. I kissed her goodbye in front of everyone, as they boarded the bus that final morning. There were whistles and jibes and she took it like a champ. I was churning inside, I wanted to climb onto that bus with her. Mexico in the winter, she whispered in my ear. Yeah, I said, good times. Take care James, she said touching my face. I nodded, and she climbed onto the bus, and drove out of my life. Small world. Being at a loose end, after an intense time with Gail, left me pissed off. I knew I'd do something stupid if I stayed, so I made a plan to slip back into America. The point I chose had been quiet last time I'd used it, and nothing on the news worried me particularly. I sold the car, and planned a 3-day hike across scrub country, a quick swim, and I'd be in Texas. A day and a half in, and I was 2 miles from the US-Mexico border. I waited for night and set out. 5 minutes later I heard gunfire. Machine gun fire. I got low and waited. More shooting. It was a genuine two-sided fight, the competing firearms sounded different. I decided to take a closer look. My inner monster, always hungry for carnage, woke up and had me sneaking like a pro. I crested a small rise and decided I was out of my depth instantly. I saw dozens of muzzle flashes, a larger number of men had the high ground coming from the Mexican side. In a small gully below, men were staying low, firing blindly back up the slope. I didn't like their chances. I heard boots running towards me, I jumped down into a small hollow, and got knocked flat onto my ass. There was a gun in my face, and the guy was hissing at me in Spanish. And then, James? James? What the fuck are you doing here? Dale? He grabbed me by the collar, dragged me up and shoved me hard against a pile of dirt. You can't be here James, he whispered angrily. Dale was in camo, and looked to be equipped for mischief. He shook his head in disbelief and talked rapidly. Listen, get away from here, he pointed north. Don't get caught. By anyone. Who are those guys? I said calmly, pointing back towards the high ground. Dale gave me a shut the hell up look. You can't be here James, it's about to get real. He turned me north, and pushed me away. Go, go. I left him, stashed my backpack, and doubled back. He made his way up the rise very quickly, then he hunkered down, and did something with a radio and a map. More men were closing on his position. I went into the heat of the hunt. Time slowed down, and my senses sharpened. I'd been too relaxed before. Dale should never have seen or heard me. From across the scrub, I could hear the gunmen whispering. The language was weird to me, not Spanish. They would find Dale in just a few minutes. I hunted them. Something twisted in me, warped me. I ran on all fours easily. The sky became a gray wash filled with razor-sharp stars, and cold gray wisps of clouds. There were 5 of them, I could smell them now. I think they were whispering in Farsi. I sprinted, and slammed into a man within 10 feet of Dale. The impact was brutal. He was momentarily stunned, but came to his senses just as I pushed my thumbs into his eye sockets, and broke his skull in half like an orange. His friends were on the scene in seconds and looked on in horror. Someone screamed. My victim's head disintegrated, leaving a lower jaw attached to a gurgling throat. Blood gushed out everywhere. I lost myself. I was coldly butchering this man, and I was utterly indifferent. I ripped his ribcage open and smashed my face into his heart, swallowing it immediately, while his lungs slapped wetly against my cheeks and his stomach fell out. I hefted the body over my head, its entrails slopping out, and threw it into the scrub. I roared. An alien and ugly roar. It pulled me back from the brink for a moment. I wondered, what the hell made that noise? Then every gun there began shooting in my direction. Men were screaming El Diablo. El Diablo. Some ran back the way they came, others scattered in random directions. A distant dull buzz intruded into my hearing. Then I heard car engines start. I made a beeline for them. I cleared the scrub to run straight out onto a dirt road. The gunmen were piling into SUVs and pulling out as fast as they could. Late arrivals ran after the trucks, and they were dragged on board by their friends. That buzzing again. It seemed closer. I ran after the last SUV, like a dog chasing a car. In a burst of feral energy I caught up with it and smashed through the rear window into the rear compartment. There were 4 men inside. Time stopped, while 2 men in the rear tried to bring their guns up to aim at me. The barrels scraped across the interior roof. It was too late for that, and I smashed my left arm across the left headrest and snapped that man's neck. His head smashed through the passenger's window, and the door buckled, nearly shearing the door lock. The guy on the right drilled some holes in the roof with panic fire. I ripped the gun out of his hands, and sucked out his heart. The front seat passenger brought a handgun to bear on me. I moved sideways too fast for him. He was shooting into thin air. I ripped the seat down into the fully reclined position, which surprised him. Sucking his heart out surprised him even more. The driver, who had the most time, had managed to bring a handgun up in his left hand. That buzzing was really annoying me now. What was that? I heard the missile a split second before it hit the truck. There was a blinding flash, and a sound so loud I lost my hearing instantly. The shock of the explosion drove me straight into the driver, as the SUV flew apart and corkscrewed sideways off the road. I saw the engine rip free from the engine bay. A billion shards of glass, metal and plastic exploded around me. Body parts of the passengers collided with the fragmenting passenger compartment. Blood boiled dry instantly in a hellish fire, and a smoldering pine fresh air freshener slowly tumbled past me. My forehead was driven into the driver's gun to meet a barely seen second flash. I was flung violently out of the mangled truck, smashing into the dirt, a split second before karma dropped a ton of shredded and burning vehicle on top of me. Mama Tambo. Nothing mattered, not the dark, not the absence of sensation, not even whether I was alive or dead. I must have lain there for a while, I have no way of knowing. Without warning, the dark shadow of the SUV wreck was pushed aside, and a disfigured face looked down at me. The deformed face was a patchwork of different skin colors and textures, seamlessly merged together by an expert surgeon. A baggy skin hung loosely on a giant frame, and whatever passed for muscles and a skeleton. The eyes were set deep in uneven sockets. It had almost no nose but two flat nostrils, and a thin set of slack lips. "Hello," rumbling growl emerged from that mouth, with an almost amused tone. The baggie scooped me up, and threw me over its shoulder, like a rag doll. I saw another burned-out wreck, as we rapidly disappeared into the scrublands. How long had I been there? The journey lasted for hours, or days, as we crossed some threshold of night into an even deeper night. A hard frost covered everything, only distant starlight lit our way. The land we traversed was utterly dead. Now and then, a branch would snap off a dead tree, and shatter into mineral chips. Fossilized and frozen. I froze too. The baggie repositioned me for its comfort from time to time, my posture set in ice. After what seemed like forever, we approached a heavily eroded mountain. Vast slides of shingle, and earth gathered by rivulets over millennia, gathered around it like a slough of skin. But it remained coherent enough to imply an ancient shape. It had been a giant structure once. As we got closer, it was obvious man-made, at least something intelligent had built it. It was so ancient it was nearly indistinguishable from a natural landform. There, at its base between small hills of scree and dirt, was a ragged hole. The baggie carried me inside, and as we went further underground, the craft of its builders was revealed. The entrance opened out to a wide corridor. Enormous stone blocks, cut in elaborate interlocking zigzags, decorated the hall. The stonework was sharp, and after a while the floor was spotless. Someone or something kept the interior immaculate. We came to an elaborate stone arch, carved with bold, angular writing or symbols. There were no curves, not in the stonework or the carvings. Nothing in that place suggested a human hand. The baggie took me down a long flight of shallow stairs, until we came to a pitch-black room. Even supernatural sight could not penetrate that dark. The baggie sat me down on the floor, in utter darkness, and we waited. After what must have been hours, I sensed my posture change, as I defrosted. There was an unexpected flare of orange light, and somewhere in the dark, someone lit a cigarillo. The first pinpoint of smoldering orange light was joined by a similar glint, in a pair of eyes. They observed me coldly. Somewhere, I conjured up the will to at least think, am I dead? I heard the inrush of air into lungs, and the cigarillo flared. A cold light slowly rose in the room. In carved stone alcoves, in a hexagonal room, were the mummified remains of giant humanoids. But in the center, upon a stone plinth, sat an old giantess. Her features seemed to be a merger of every major ethnicity on Earth, but her skin was dark blue, like ink. "You're mostly dead," came her reply. I couldn't move, or feel, but I could at least think. Some great change had occurred, at least while I was in this place. "You've been looking for me," she said. "Mama Tambo?" I asked. She nodded once. My numb fingers probed my forehead. There was a hole. It hurt. "I see you, James. And now, I will retell the same tired story, I've told 10,000 just like you, over eons. Her voice was deep, and smooth, and held a lilt I couldn't place. Long ago my people made a civilization here on Earth. After a great age, we perfected our technology, a means of invoking our will to shape the materials of the Earth. But we weren't satisfied with that, we pushed deeper into the means to manipulate the world, and conceived a notion to create a god that would serve us. I'd been shot in the head, I leant forward awkwardly and slapped the back of my head. A metal clunk echoed in the room, as a flattened bullet dropped out of my forehead. I looked up at Mama Tambo. "Sorry," I said. Mama Tambo and the baggie were both staring at me, coldly. She drew on the cigarillo, and blew a giant plume of blue smoke into the chamber. We built machines to focus our willpower. Our first efforts, our rough sketches. She gestured to the baggie, were loyal servants and protectors. Like Sri Bhagavan. She bowed to the baggie, which bowed in return. We took the sketch, and produced the masterpiece. Your kind are attempting the same thing, with an electronic god, a pale sketch of our folly. At first we controlled it, it was all present and knew all we knew, it only lacked the raw power to effect the changes we desired on Earth. The baggie grew restless, and seemed agitated. Feeling was returning to my body, and in a short while I was shivering violently, I was freezing. God, it hurt. But how to fuel this artificial god? We'd merely contained concentrated will, our will into a coherent form held together by technology. No, we needed to raise its powers, we made a terrible error. We fed it, the living. I was hurting, my limbs recovered some strength with dull aches intensifying. I managed to alter my posture, but it brought me little comfort. There was a lot of life on Earth, then, that could feed our synthetic god. We built structures, to extract their energies. And its power grew. And with its rising might, it looked upon us not as creators, but jailers. It turned on us. I stood, shakily, and looked around the chamber. The mummies all looked similar to Mama Tambo. They were so old, dry canvas-like skin stretched over giant bones. In the end, despite valiant efforts by our military, and our loyal servants, we realized we were doomed. Our patchwork god was beyond our control, but for one weakness. I coughed up blood, black soot and dust, I spat it onto the floor. What did you do? I managed. We destroyed the cogs and wheels that allowed it to remain coherent. It was composed of will, but without flesh or a soul, only its desire to survive holds it together now. It ended our culture, a few of us survived, and became your gods of old. She shook her head. But it wasn't enough. Something was coming, something I didn't want to hear. We had dissipated it into the ether, but it found all it needed in the creatures you call your ancestors. She stood. She was truly magnificent, and terrible, a genuine giant. It whispers, into your species' ears, until one of you listens. Until one of you give it a home. And then it grants you terrible power, in exchange for your obedience. I traced the edge of the room, making for the door. The baggie just watched me impassively. And you heard it, didn't you, James? It whispered, and you listened. She stepped down off the plinth, and walked calmly towards me. She crouched down on her haunches, a foot from my face, and looked into my soul. I tried to turn my head, but my eyes wouldn't leave hers. What did it tell you? What did it say that you wanted to hear? She said quietly. Can't you take it out of me, make it stop? I can't, she said. Some terrible energy moved within her, as if all the world's history of horrors camped just behind her eyes. In time, it will fade from this world, and its final threads will scatter and rise no more. I shook my head. It's already begun, but it will try again and again until that time, to restore itself. It's building itself a new body, from silicon and gold. Just like all the other times, its was briefly reborn, it always destroys its host. Yours is the seventh great civilization to be devoured since ours. I looked at the baggie, its stare drilled through me. It's using your technology, to restore what we denied it, it's using you to feed it. No, I yelled. No. 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 There was a flare of anger in me, but the heat of the hunt did not rise, could not, in this place. The baggie growled and reared up over me. In time you will age and die, Shri will come for you, and sew your skin into his, and bind your tainted soul to himself. We will starve our enemy. I wanted to escape, run out the door, but the baggie had moved to block my path. Mama Tambo stood and inspected the mummies in their alcoves. The eater of souls, she said solemnly, can only delay its own death, for a few more millennia. But it will cause more misery in that time, than in all the previous history of the world. No escape. Die and the baggie gets me. Live with that knowledge, and every day is a countdown to ruin. If I stopped, I said in desperation. Mama Tambo shrugged. If I stopped, she said indifferently. If I did this, or I did that. If. She drew on the cigarillo again. It saw you, James, and it laid its will on you, and you said yes. Billions of you over time have said no. Billions, she sighed and returned to her seat. He wants you to live. To serve him. Do as you please, but in the end you are mine, or he eats your soul. She flicked her hand in a dismissive gesture. My message is delivered, Shri will return you to your world. She turned her back to me, the baggie looked my way. The light in the chamber dimmed, becoming pitch black again. A flare of orange light revealed the silhouette of the giantess one last time. I felt my strength leave me and I collapsed onto the floor. I awoke, with a fright, still in the chamber. A pale light shone through a hexagonal hole in the chamber roof. Sitting upon a stone plinth, in the middle of the chamber was the mummified remains of Mama Tambo. I stared in wonder and fear. A shuffling noise alerted me to a presence, and I turned my head just in time, to have my face smothered by Sri Bhagavan's giant patchwork hand. It was dawn in the scrublands. I had no idea how I got there, the baggie was nowhere to be seen, I could have stood there forever. Why bother doing anything? I was doomed either way, there was no escape. So I sat down, in the dirt, in ripped and charred clothes with burns and ragged cuts slowly mending. It hurt, the burns were the worst, the smell was terrible. I should have been dead, something had preserved me in the blast, the Eater of Souls had other plans for me. There had to be a way out of this, some other power to appeal to? The sun rose, it was too bright, my eyes watered and my ears rang. Mama Tambo was not a friend after all, a ghost from a dead race, the baggies were real though. The skin on my hands grew back as I watched, exposed bone was covered in muscle and then pink flesh. My only other option was to appeal to the Eater of Souls, please don't eat my soul. Yeah. Like that would work. My monster compass pointed to my stashed backpack, not very far away. After a slow and painful walk I recovered it. I took a risk and turned on my phone. There were messages. Dale had been worried sick. 7 days had passed, I'd put him through the ringer, waiting to hear from me. I sent him a message. I'm okay. Had to lay low for a while. Really sorry. I changed into fresh clothes and boots, and with no other options, I reluctantly walked north to Texas. We're all monsters but I'm different, Part 9. Home. It took about 2 weeks to gather my loot from various self-storage facilities. Up and down the highways of Texas again, it was beginning to feel too familiar. The whole time, ghosts are fussing around in the back of my mind, alien memories from lives I never lived. And my paranoia started to rise, was ICE going to pick me up, were the cartels going to track me down? One night I'd stay in a small town, in a cheap hotel, hiding away. The next I'd camp out in a decent hotel with lots of foot traffic and plenty of eyes to ward off the bogeyman. Finally, the gathering of my ill-gotten gains was complete. I dumped everything I'd used, brought new bags and clothes, shoes and a phone with money I'd lifted from cartel gunmen. I never touched the bundle of money wrapped in plastic, I figured it was dirtier than just organized crime. I needed a fence, to swap it for clean cash, or someone to launder it so I could use it. I had no idea about that world. Perhaps I should just dump it on the side of the road, forget I ever saw it. Yeah. No. I drove north, took a lazy route, and stretched out my clean cash by sleeping in the car. Every now and then I messaged my brothers. Cody was cool, Dale was cold. We had to talk, and soon, it was putting a dent in our brotherly love. Family. Nothing is quite as important as family, and when they're gone, what did I have? I'd probably outlive Cody and Dale. I'd cooled my hunt for now, even the hogs of Texas had a reprieve before I left, but even if I only hunted like Crow Bill, I might live 100+ years. Maybe like Gary, I'd pass 100 and then some. I had to get that money clean, somehow, it set me up for life, but if life went for longer than a natural span it might not be enough. But FK working, right? I drove into town, after a long time away, and the place felt like a postage stamp. A rusty, tired, worn-out postage stamp on a water-stained envelope. I got some groceries, and headed home. Cody would be home from college in a few more weeks, Dale, I don't know. Whenever he got leave, but why come here? What was here for him now? He wasn't just an ordinary soldier, that much was clear. Who gets to pull duty inside the Mexican border? That's Black Ops, I knew that much, which meant we could never discuss it. Not really. At least he couldn't, and what the hell could I say? Hey, I'm a superpowered cannibal, consuming souls for godlike ancient artificial life form that will devour me upon death and drain my soul like a battery. How's your day going? Even if he believed me, what good would it do? So I concocted a lie, a plausible one, I hoped. The nights were long, back in my hometown in the mountains. I'd always been a loner, my friends were few and far between, and they had all left town after graduation. I moped around the house, tidied up a few things here and there, and sat out on the front porch, like my grandparents used to a bazillion years ago. I'd sit for hours, just listening, and watching. A car would go by now and then, a cat or stray dog. Occasionally some guy would wander past, or a couple holding hands, or more rarely a group of kids heading into town or drunks coming back from a bar. I'd hear the train running through, on the far side of town, or a truck with a heavy load, just passing through. I fell asleep a few times on the porch. One night I awoke at 3 a.m. to a familiar cry. Whoop whoop, and the disconcerting mirror reply. Two baggies, never far away, always within earshot and ready to harvest me for Mama Tambo. I was so screwed. The eater of souls gets me, and I'm gone forever. Or Mama Tambo stitches me into a baggie's skin, and it holds me for, how long? I wasn't sure. I grew tired of fearing that fate, so one night, I went stalking a baggie. The most lethal thing on earth to me, and I went hunting one. It didn't take long, it was like I had acquired a sense for them. After a quiet 40 minutes hunting in the forest near my home, it walked up to me out of the dark. Hi was my pathetic greeting. It stared at me, stared through me, its power was evident. I could feel it. Here's the thing. If you come to take my soul, how long will you take it for? A complicated expression, or just plain contempt, contorted its face strangely. I mean, if it's oblivion at the hands of the eater of souls, or a long time with you, what can I expect? It stepped closer, and I instinctively stepped back, but before I could do anything more, it gripped my hand and pushed my palm against its belly. Okay? I said, and I was going to say something smart-assed when the lights went out. I saw a legion of hunters, hundreds bound in this one baggie. I saw them taken at the moment of their death, their souls forcibly held in their corpse, by some power. Mama Tambo, in her crypt, would remove their skin and carefully sew it into a dormant baggie. My vision shifted, and I went for a nightmare ride through the 700 souls, bound beneath my hand. I saw deeds so foul, so disgusting and evil that I recoiled and begged for the baggie to stop. It didn't. I saw hunters like I was as a kid, confused, timid and ultimately harmless more or less, except to small animals. I saw kin devourers, who ate on the other hunters, once they had clocked up enough souls to make the effort worthwhile. There were secret eaters, who sneaked around like Gary, only eating the hearts of the newly dead. Another kind, I don't know what to call them, set up elaborate traps in the wilderness, or beneath cities. They lured people in, and hunted them for amusement. Some ran wild, like a rabid animal in the forest, eating woodsmen and hikers. Some were so far gone, they looked, and acted like demonically possessed animals. A few made it into a city hall, or a political position. They mingled freely with men, but ate them at their leisure, when the mood took them. Some ate their way through frontier towns, or isolated hospitals or orphanages. I was weeping, without realizing I had started. I was finally released from a nightmare memory of an eater, who cultivated children, and when ready devoured them entirely. He had managed a children's home, 20 years ago. I was on the forest floor, the baggie still held my wrist, but not against its belly. I brushed my free hand against my eyes, and tried to stand up. I live in there with them? I asked. It nodded a yes. Is it like that, all the time? Nightmare after nightmare? It cocked its head to one side. Every day? It nodded a yes. I hadn't meant to, but I cracked up, starting sobbing. To hell with that, there had to be an escape clause. Didn't there? It let my hand go, and glared at me for a long minute, and it turned and quietly trudged away. I eventually stood up, and brushed leaves and dirt of my knees. Down below, the town lights twinkled in the cool mountain air, and a long-haul truck rumbled along the bypass to the highway. I don't want this. I remember whispering to myself. The stars above were silent, and even nature was quiet. I was beyond alone. I was on the outskirts of creation, just a sack of mussels waiting to either eat, or be eaten. For a long time, I just stood there, looking at the town. Somewhere, someone down there was eating a late meal, or kissing his wife goodnight, or dreaming something nice. Some guy was doing my old job, in some quiet corner an opioid addict was hurting, and somewhere someone was having a shittier night than me. I guess I was frozen to the spot for a while. What's the point, right? Why do anything now? It all ends in crap anyway. I damned myself by listening to that whisper, years ago. That churned over and over in my mind, but what had I heard? What had I acted on? I can remember every split second of all the hunts I've done, so I must be able to remember the first, surely. Rattling around in my head was the memory, I just had to tease it out, the first time I ate under the influence of the Eater of Souls. It was a stubborn, hazy memory, but I kept picking away at it. And then, after a series of mangled mental images and confused sensations, it was there. I stood, in the empty lot near my parents' house. Looking at the young me, playing innocently with the kitten, I felt a pang of sadness for that kid. The shit he was going to go through, the evil he'd yet to do, all the chances he'd have to do something else he'd blow. Young me picked up the kitten, and he looked at it with real affection, innocent and clean. I hunted then, inside my memory, I hunted the whisper. Everything slowed down, I heard 2 heartbeats, cat and boy. I couldn't change that moment, but I could put myself between the whisper and the young me, intercept the curse. I reached the uncorrupted me, and my head was between his and the cat, my monster super senses working perfectly. Even here, in my own head. The whisper wasn't a voice or an instruction, it was an imperative or an urge. Sly, slippery and elusive. Eat the cat wasn't so much spoken, as hinted at, so far below the noise of my boyish thoughts. It was like a shadow from a thought 1,000 feet above, it cast a stain down where my mind seldom looked. Way down in the gap between sleep and waking, where dreams get mixed up with the noise of the world outside. "Got you, you fucker," I whispered. And I had it. It was a thread, like an unraveled stitch from a fine silk shirt. I held it tightly. I was yanked away at high speed, pulled through memory, and then beyond memory into some other place. Or unplace. A giant cathedral-like space, where something had gathered threads like a spider gathers the lines of its web. There were literally billions, of fine thin threads, leading to a glass-like core. Too complicated to really see, too many lines to unravel with my human mind, but I still had an impression of order and purpose. Nothing was random here, it was all so deliberate, so meticulously managed. I remember looking at my hand, the thread was stronger than steel, stronger than anything man-made. It would not snap, and I could not break it, it had to be refused. Too late for that now. But at least now I knew. And since I was here, why not poke my fingers into the eye of the one that seduced me? I floated towards the core, but something prevented me getting too close, instead I slid over some invisible surface. I didn't resist, or push, I was on dangerous ground. I could smell it, this artificial will Mama Tambo's people had made, and it was utterly alien. I think it began to notice me. I felt some power coil up, a mood shifted, time to go. I looked down into my hand and the thread I held, and I hated it with all my soul. I'd smash galaxies to be rid of it. My mental fingers unfurled, and the thread slipped from my hand, and I looked up just in time to see some malevolent image of a monstrous face begin to form. And then I was back on the mountain. You have to refuse it, I whispered to myself, and to do that you had to guard against latching onto an impulse pretending to be from you. Easier said than done. In the cold light of morning, I picked up the burner phone and made the call. A secretary answered, and after a short wait, I was connected. "Hello Gary? I need your help."